Hi, I'm Krutika, and today's episode is with Jaydeep. Have you ever stopped to consider the impact of what you're eating? I've been a vegetarian all my life, a decision driven partly by the fact that I grew up in a household where this was the diet, and so by default I ended up adopting. Growing up, I've been surrounded by friends, family, colleagues, and well, also my partner eating meat, but I considered my diet to be the one that was not harming any other living being, and that gave me a certain peace of mind. But then I had this conversation with JD, and it's genuinely opened my eyes. He's adopted the vegan lifestyle, driven by a strong passion of ensuring that his life choices do not harm any living being. Having made the switch to becoming vegan in 2020, JD is on a journey to empower and educate others to make the right choices about what they consume. This conversation is not pushing an agenda or going deep into the ethics of veganism. It's simply one person's journey, why JD chose this path and what it means to him. Hello, Jay. So good to have you on my podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm really excited for our conversation. But before we come on to that, I know your two daughters had a bit of a gymnastics competition thing today. How did that go?
They did, yes. It went really, really well. They came back with medals.
Wow, very nice. Now, I know your daughters are very talented in that space, so well done to them. And we're recording on a Sunday. It's a bit of a rainy day, bit grey. Have you got any plans for the rest of this evening?
Take my dad out for dinner. It was his birthday yesterday. So we'll probably go for a bit of family dinner.
Glad that you've mentioned dinner because obviously our conversation today is all about your journey into veganism. Now, I know you haven't always been a vegan. So, I guess before we even come on to your journey turning vegan, can I just start with a really, what might seem like a basic or an obvious question? What does being vegan mean to you?
So vegan is about anything that you consume, whether it's through orally or wear as clothing. You reduce your impact onto the animal and the society and the world around you. For me, that's what vegan is.
And what inspired you to kind of switch to that vegan lifestyle?
A lot of reading, making conscious decisions of the actions that I'm taking 3 times a day that we all do, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and how to reduce that impact as best as I can as an individual onto the environment and hopefully have a world for my two daughters growing up. So the journey for me started, I guess, in the start of COVID, March 2020, if I recall correctly. I think we went into lockdown. Not much to do apart from work from home, maybe water the garden every now and then. And we were all kind of inside closed doors. Started to wonder what veganism is. One inquiry led to another just to understand what it is. There is this Netflix program out there, which is the one that everyone has, I'm guessing everyone has seen. And it just kind of got me to read more journals, what it was, what it entailed, what's the pros and cons on it. And I guess 6 months later, I flipped the switch to veganism. I had some family members that were vegan, and I didn't know what the fuss was about until I went through that path myself. So that's how it kind of started for me.
So it seems like it was your curiosity that led you to kind of make this discovery about the veganism lifestyle and what that entailed. But I also know that you used to eat meat before. So that would have been a pretty significant sort of transition. What was it particularly that led you to make that discovery? Was there a particular incident or just simply a combination of things that led you to it?
So, number one, having a lot more time in your hands. COVID, apart from work, there was not much to do. We were restricted in terms of going out. And also, we planted a couple of seeds in the garden, growing strawberries, little cucumbers, spring onions, and so forth. And I think that was the first kind of opening doors for me in terms of, hey, look, we can grow our own things. What are we eating? And it's those questions that kind of led one thing to another, just to read up more onto it. I read plenty of journals, what it entails in terms of what are we as a person from what there's that saying, you are what you eat. And if we are consuming a flesh of another animal, how does it impact us? All the diseases that you can potentially get from that. I mean, I didn't make a decision overnight because I'm the kind of person that likes to, I guess, research things before diving in, from the smallest things to the largest things. And this was for me ultimately a life decision that I wanted to make. I didn't want to do veganism because it was trendy, because it was cool. That wasn't the determining factor for me. This was a life choice where I know that whatever I'm consuming 3 times a day will have a massive, wide impact onto the society around me, and I guess globally as well.
Now, you mentioned the research that you did, which is great that you kind of took it upon yourself to read around the subject. What would you say was the most profound thing that you uncovered through the reading?
So I guess, look, apologies to your viewers or listeners, I should say. Some of these are quite graphic, which is, I guess, hidden away from the meat, dairy, and egg industry. The biggest one for me was, look, I wasn't eating meat during the times of COVID. I was vegetarian during this stage. But even being vegetarian, people believe that if you're a vegetarian, you have the upper hand compared to consuming meat. I guess that's how the kind of hierarchy of society falls. You meat eater, vegetarian, and then you have veganism. So the thing that actually got to me, and it's been watching videos, it's milk itself. And I don't know if your listeners are kind of aware of the cruelty that a cow has to go through day in, day out to produce milk for us that we consume. A cow itself is a female mammal, and all females, for them to have milk secretion, is to become pregnant. We use words, or words are used in the industry to make us feel better than actually what's happening. So we use words like artificial insemination. That basically is another word for rape. The definition for rape for me is being pregnant without your willingness or your acceptance. Now, for a cow to produce milk, they have to be, let's keep it clean, inseminated with bull semen. And that is forcefully injected to them. Then, once they are pregnant, and their pregnancy term is very similar to a human female, which is around 9 months, as soon as the calf is born, the calf is actually taken away from its mother. And the bellows and the screams that a cow will make for days on end to have a calf return back to her. But it falls on deaf ears because we want to consume that milk. The milk that we're drinking is designed for a baby calf, not for an adolescent human or an adult. And that's the one that really got to me, connecting the dots, the cruelty of it. And that cruelty led me to look at other cruelty within the meat, dairy, and egg industry. It's absolutely shocking. We're the only mammals that consume another mammal's milk. A baby cow gets milk from its mother. A baby hippopotamus gets milk from its mother. A baby rabbit gets a milk from its mother. Right? Why is it that us as humans feast on its milk? Milk has something very similar to a drug that we're all aware of, which is morphine, and we become addicted to it. But they actually have a chemical in there called casomorphine, and that is designed for the baby calf to be close to its mother. And that's what milk has. And unfortunately, it impacts us as humans. Once you've had that milk from a cow, you can't get off it. It's very hard. The cheese that we eat, they all have this casomorphine in it.
Thank you for sharing that, Jay. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm not someone that has educated myself within this realm. So, everything that you are sharing is obviously something that I'm learning for the first time as well. Is this something that you feel so strongly about that you have also then taken the approach of wanting to educate those around you? Because I understand your wife also turned vegan. Are your kids also vegan?
So you're right. My wife is vegan. I think the same story that impacted me in terms of the kind of whole milk story and the milk videos. I think that's the one that actually was the turning point for her to go vegan as well. The kids, they're semi-vegan. Or obviously, whatever we cook and eat at home, they do have that. It can be a challenge in certain aspects of such as schools, when they go to parties, to be 100% vegan there. So I guess they're 50% vegan at the moment. Sierra, who's my eldest, is probably about 80% there. In terms of being vegan, hopefully, rather than later, they can join mine and my wife's quest onto living a vegan lifestyle.
And do you hope that they would make that decision out of their own free will through the education and research that you've done being imparted to them? Or will that be a decision that you sort of enforce upon them?
It's about choice, right? It's a choice. But then you got to ask the question, what choices do these animals have? It's our choice to drink the milk. It's our choice to eat their flesh. It's our choice to have the honey. I think I will be leaning towards them to make that decision based on the information out there. I'm not going to shy away from the information that a lot of people shy away from to make that decision. But I will certainly be giving my reasoning for being a vegan, how beneficial it is for their own life, how beneficial it is for the environment around them. I can't make that decision for them because I would like for them to make that choice willingly.
You mentioned some challenges that the kids tend to face, in schools, the parties they attend. What challenges have you faced in making this sort of switch to veganism?
A lot of people ask me this. Do you not miss the meat that you used to eat? Do you not miss cheese? I think that's normally the one. Truth be told, I haven't found it difficult at all. There are so many alternatives out there that you can consume and you would not miss meat at all. There are, I guess, difficult decisions like cheese. That tends to be a little bit harder to overcome. However, I just ask myself the question before something's in front of me, is the life of that being worth more than my taste buds? Any decisions that I make, any choices that I make, they should not be a victim onto the back of that. Now, if there is a victim, that's how I persuade myself to make the right decision for me. Yeah, cheese seems to be probably the hardest, but there's wonderful places out there. There's Purezzo, that does fantastic pizzas. I mean, I'm a pizza lover. I love my pizzas. Yes, I have to take some sort of reduction in taste for the benefit of the animal kingdom. And, that's a willingly choice that I've made.
Did you sort of miss some of the food that you used to consume before after making this transition?
I don't think I actually missed as per se. There's so many good alternatives now. Living in UK, there are so many alternatives. Yes, it can be a little bit of challenge, especially when you go to certain parts of India. I mean, I travel a lot for work. I am willing to go that extra mile for the sake of the animal. I've discovered the other side of the menu that I've never discovered before. I'm willing to plan my, whether it's business trips, whether it's traveling out to any functions, based on my food requirements. I would either good old McDonald's, they've started doing the plant burgers. There's Burger King doing vegan chickens. So I would have to, yes, I have to plan a little bit more, but it's more planning than actually replacing the missing taste, so to speak. It is now becoming readily available, vegan food, but you still have to plan to a certain degree.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think veganism, with it being a bit more mainstream nowadays, the options that you get are a lot more vast and varied, and that helps the vegetarians like me as well. Whereas previously, even being a vegetarian was a bit of an anomaly almost. I used to often get the questions like, what do you eat as a vegetarian? Is it just vegetables? But now there are so many different options, especially with the different types of mock meats that are now around. Some people I know turn to veganism for health benefits. I mean, would you say you've noticed any kind of additional benefits being vegan on your health? And if so, what are they?
The first one that I noticed very, very quickly was this feeling of being full after eating. Now, if I recall the days when I used to gouge upon an animal flesh, whether it be chicken, whether it be lamb, anything of that sort, after a heavy meal, I would feel very, very bloated, lack of energy, and I guess feeling a bit lethargic. That quickly went away by being vegan. I mean, I could have a full meal and still go for a 5K walk. It wouldn't be an issue. That's something that I've realized, I guess, almost from day one. Being more lighter on your feet, being less tired. Other things that I've noticed is I just have more energy. I appreciate it's a bit of a awkward statement because vegan food itself is less calorie dense than meat. But rather than eating a smaller quantity, which is high in calories, such as meat, you end up eating a larger quantity to kind of have the same amount of calories that you need. But certainly you do feel lighter. It doesn't slow you down. I haven't done a recent body MOT test, but I hope that being vegan for so many years has probably had reduction on my cholesterol, even if I had any. I haven't noticed any deficiencies in the last 4 years, and I haven't done any tests, to be honest with you.
What would you say to those that often talk about how the protein element within plant-based food is often not as, you'd have to eat a lot more to sort of get the same amount of protein in versus, say, eating meat? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do you feel that you're able to get the protein that you need? There's such a big push in media now about getting the right protein in. It's all about the protein. Do you feel a lack of when it comes to vegan food and protein and getting enough in?
It is a buzzword at the moment, right? Protein. Everyone's talking about protein. The best way to kind of answer this is proteins itself can only come from plants, right? We just use the animals as a way to extract the proteins from the plant. No animal produces protein themselves, so why not go to the source itself? Yes, you might need to consume a bit more for the same size of meat you're going to eat, but at least there's no cruelty involved, right? There's so many products out there that are high in protein that you can consume, and it shouldn't make any difference in terms of the protein intake that you get. In fact, the protein that you get directly from plants is actually cleaner than the actual protein that you get through animals, which has been filtered. We basically use an animal as a subsidiary to process a protein for us. Why not go to the source itself, which is a plant?
What's been the most surprising thing that you've learned through your journey to veganism?
I guess it's the little impact that I'm having in the world around me. It's about educating, or it's about learning what veganism is. I feel good when I give the educations to friends and family around me in terms of the benefits of veganism. I would love for all to actually try a 28-day vegan challenge and see how they feel. It's not very hard to do. I don't think there is a single biggest. It's just feeling good about yourself that your daily routine has not impacted anyone else's, or you reduce the suffering of animals.
The vegan lifestyle, as you earlier described it, isn't just about what you're consuming, it's a lifestyle choice. Do you find that being vegan has seeped into some of the consumerism decisions that you make, whether it's the products that you buy? For some people, they think about the impact on the climate as well when they think about veganism. Have you taken your decision to adopt this lifestyle to that level of commitment?
Look, short answer to that is yes, but I will break it down. Now, to be a vegan is not just about food. I know we've spent quite a lot of time talking about food, but it's about things that you buy, that you wear. I don't buy anything with wool. I don't buy anything with silk. I love wearing my ties. I love wearing my suits. Now, the best suits you can get, I guess they're made out of, the finest New Zealand wool. So I certainly stopped buying wool now. I stopped buying things made out of silk. So it's conscious decisions that I have to make on a daily basis. And then you touched upon something which I guess it's very hidden, which is the environmental impact. If I ask pretty much your listeners say what's the biggest impactor for, I guess, climate changes, most folks will turn around and say it's the transportation system, it's the fossil fuels, and so forth. But in fact, one of the discoveries that I made, that animal agriculture is the single biggest polluter or contributor to greenhouse gases and climate change than any of the others combined. Animal agriculture contributes about 60% to the greenhouse gases. This is not talked about readily in media. The government is very quick to say stop, buying a petrol or diesel car, but they won't say stop eating the chicken or lamb, considering that they're the biggest contributor to climate change.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I would have thought that when you were describing your kind of journey into veganism, that climate change would have fallen under the umbrella of part of why you made that choice. I mean, do you have a favorite go-to vegan dish that you like to eat or that you perhaps cook yourself?
So my absolute favorite is, I mean, I used to love doner meat, and I there's a place, luckily around the corner from us. It's in Preston Road. It's called Vegan Hub, and they do one of the best doner meats out there. I've become quite friendly with the owner there, and they particularly make a meat dish that I have had on numerous occasions, from a place where I used to work in Canary Wharf. They used to do doner meat in a specific way, which is, I guess, a very Bangladeshi way of cooking this cuisine. And they actually do the same dish for me, obviously without the lamb in there. That's one of my favorite go-to places.
As someone that's eaten the sort of meat equivalent of it, do you feel the vegan alternative is a very close enough flavour to the meat version, or the texture even?
This one, I would say it's 99% and above. The reason why I say that is I've got a few friends who do consume meat, and when they come and visit me, or we talk about eating this particular dish, and they absolutely love this, and it's so good. It's very hard to tell the difference. Yes, there's meat products out there which you can tell the difference, but this is very, very close to that. Doner meat.
Yeah. And so, are there any vegan alternatives that you've tasted which you actually think are better than the meat equivalent?
It's a tough one because I don't think there is one. I've tried a myriad of food where I'm just like, wow, For example, Brewdog, where I work in Canary, right opposite, they do these wings alternatives. It's made out of seitan, so that I would say that's much better than the actual meat wings that I used to eat.
Another question that I just wanted to ask you is that, do you feel that adopting the vegan lifestyle has meant you have found yourself eating also more vegetables? I know we've alluded here to some of the sort of mock meat equivalents like seitan. Are you finding that you're getting more vegetables in your diet as a result of adopting this lifestyle?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, look, that's vegetable is your go-to, your beans, your legumes. Those are your kind of go-to food. So naturally, you end up eating them more. With all diets, there are unhealthy ways of living as well as healthy ways of living. Now, truth be told, I'm not one of the healthiest vegan person out there. I do like my processed vegan food, but I've certainly have increased my vegetable intake.
You mentioned also previously when traveling, sometimes it can be difficult and that you might just have to plan, where you're going to eat. So I wanted to ask, there are obviously social occasions or parties that you might have to attend where maybe the options for vegans are limited. How do you find yourself navigating those situations?
I have had to either go hungry at times, and for me not to go hungry, what I would do is for family occasions or weddings that I've been invited to, or whatever functions that I've been invited to, we would actually take the stance and actually find if there's a nearest McDonald's nearby, and potentially consume that before we go to the event. And I guess there's been a lot of friends and family who have now come to terms, or they've kind of accepted that me, Priya, are vegans, and they'll go out their way to make sure that there is a dish for us. So people have been lovely. Not that it's an expectation from me, but it's lovely that they do think of us and go out the way and make sure the wine's vegan, make sure they can they've got sufficient food to actually cater for us, which is lovely. At times, like I said, I have gone hungry. I'd rather go hungry than to take a life of an animal. So that's my stance, and that's also the stance of Priya as well, who's my wife. I mean, look, there's basic food that you can always get, things like rice. You just end up eating more of that. And if you need some proteins, a can of baked beans is never far away. You can certainly dig into that. Then the real challenge comes for me is when I go traveling, because there's certain parts of Europe when we go to where it's very meat heavy, Czech Republic, one of them. And then I guess you just have to kind of live a day or two on salads or rice, or go to a supermarket. You've got simple foods like chips you can eat, potato wedges. You just have to put in a little bit more effort to actually stay true to your vegan diet.
Yeah, and what's coming through quite strongly is the passion and commitment that you have to the lifestyle choice that you've made. Because often, I can imagine that for individuals where when you're hungry and the food options aren't there, you could quite easily succumb to just, whatever is in front of you, and I suppose eating that. But it's quite refreshing to hear that you have really stuck to your guns and that you take the onus upon yourself to make sure that you're planning accordingly, which is really good to hear. I mean, are there any misconceptions about veganism that you'd really like to address or share with our listeners?
One of them is the one that you touched upon, which was, hey, do you get enough protein or do you get enough vitamins and minerals? There's, I guess, one vitamin that comes to mind, which generally folks mention, which is vitamin B12. Now, B12 actually comes from the soil. Now, we live in a very clean world where most of our vegetables, fruit are thoroughly clean, so there's no traces of vitamin B12. You can simply take a vegan alternative for that. You'd get it from the animal kingdom because, as an example, a cow would eat the grass as well as some soil with it, and that soil would actually contain the bacteria that makes the vitamin B12. So, for folks that are going to go vegan, certainly supplement would help B12. I haven't seen any deficiencies in my life so far since being vegan. But the misconception is, hey, you're not going to be strong. You're not going to get enough protein. You won't have enough energy to keep yourself going. I think these are the misconceptions, and there's thousands, if not millions, of vegans out there who are functioning absolutely fine without any issues. I think it's a misconception where it's seen as a masculinity sort of thing, where if you're eating meat, I guess the famous quote from Arnie, you hit like a vegetarian. I don't know if your listeners are old enough to remember, but Arnold Schwarzenegger actually said that, I don't think you will lack in anything by being a vegan. And there's loads of documentations out there. You just have to kind of look at the right one and make that decision.
Yeah. Now, I know you've done a lot of research yourself and you've just referenced documentation. Has there been anything specifically that you've read or that you've watched that you would love for other people who are potentially considering this lifestyle should also watch, or maybe even those that haven't considered it?
There's one video that I would suggest that everyone watch. It's from 2010. It's from a guy called Gary Yurovsky. And the actual title for the video is called The Most Important Speech You Will Ever Hear. I would like your listeners to give that 30 minutes and please watch this video. It will change everyone's perspective on what we consume. It's nicely presented. I'll send you a link and maybe you can add it to this podcast.
And is this the video that sort of also changed your mind or contributed to you changing your mind?
This was the single video that absolutely changed me 180 degrees. I stumbled upon this when I was just trying to get an idea what veganism was. And this was a video that popped up.
Now, you obviously made the switch during COVID, like you say. Now, was it a transition or was it an instant, one day you're eating meat and the next day cold turkey, not having any of it? Or was there a phased approach that you took to almost ease your body into it as well? Because I can only imagine when your body is used to a specific diet and then you're transitioning onto a new, that it requires a little bit of adjustment.
I made this switch instantly. That was it. It was a cold turkey turnaround, 180 degrees, saying I'm going to go vegan. I couldn't bear the fact that during my transition period, an animal would suffer because of me. I took their views ahead of my comfort, and it was just an instantaneous 180 degrees switch overnight.
And what advice would you give to someone that's considering trying veganism?
So before I give that advice, I would like to say that I wish I knew about veganism the amount I knew when I was doing my research earlier, because I would have went vegan even before that. Look, it's 3 meals that you have a day. Most folks cannot remember what they even ate yesterday. But for that animal that was served on your table, and I'm not just saying to meat eaters, but also vegetarians as well, the animal that gave up its life for your pleasure, is it really worth it, right? And that's the question that you should ask every time you take that spoonful of someone else's flesh or someone else's secretion, right? Is it worth that you putting in your mouth?
Wow, Jay, you've left me feeling like I need to think about some of the choices I'm making. With all my guests, I do ask one final question, and I know this conversation has specifically been about your journey into veganism, but What journey are you on next?
My next journey is how I can influence the benefits that I gain from veganism, what I've learned, and is to influence other members around me and see if they can even try initially. 28-day challenge. That would suggest all your listeners do. There's plenty of materials out there. Just search for 28-day vegan challenge. Don't have cheat days in there. Go for it and see the impact that you have on yourself and the environment around you. You'll certainly notice inner peace, and that would be my next journey, is see if I can get an extra person, an extra 10 people, an extra 100 people to be vegan, and the benefits that it brings. Hopefully, I could be next year and bring a few more vegan colleagues on your show.
That will be great to have a little follow up and see where you're at in your journey. But thank you so much, JD, for sharing your journey to veganism.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Journeys with Krutika. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and share. I'd love for you to hit the follow button wherever you get your podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a journey that you want to share, email me at journeyswithkrutika@gmail.com or reach out via my socials. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. Just search Journeys with Krutika, because your journey is extraordinary.